If your black and white photos look more like grey mush than bold works of art, you're probably following the rules too carefully. Let me show you how to break them and transform your photos into stunning works of art. Black and white photography isn't just colour with the saturation turned down. It's a completely different way of seeing. And if you want images that grab attention, you need to stop thinking in safe midtones and start thinking of deep blacks and bright whites. Now, the Ansel Adams zone system has its place, but some of today's most compelling photographers are proving there's another way to create beautiful images. I'm going to show you 3 key approaches that'll transform your black and white work. I'll tell you when to respect the rules and when to completely ignore them. Let me show you what I mean. Typically what most of us do is shoot in colour and convert it to black and white later. But really that's going about it the wrong way. Because with black and white photography, what you need is really strong tonal contrasts. Think about things like somebody dressed in dark clothes against a white wall, or strong shadows created by sunlight. If you've got a more soft day like I have today, then you're going to have to look for opportunities. Now in Kendal, one of the great things about it is it has a lot of these little yards. So I've got very narrow alleys that look on to a bright area. So that'll give me some really great things like rim lighting. It'll create nice silhouettes and it'll give me those strong contrasts I'm looking for. One of the best things I find to do to help set yourself up so that you can see in black and white is set your camera's display so it shows you in black and white. Now I'm using the Sony a7R5, so the first thing you need to do is make sure the live setting effect is on. Once you've got that on, you can then go to the color menu and set a creative profile that is black and white. And then immediately you'll see on your viewfinder everything in black and white, so you don't have to try and imagine the contrast that you'll get. It's just going to make your life easier. Look, I know what you might be thinking. It all looks very easy when I do it and the results look great. But when you try, you just don't get the same impactful photos. They look pretty good, but there's something just missing, something you can't quite put your finger on. Well, I've got some good news for you. You could book a discovery call with me and we'll talk through your photography, where I think you're going wrong, and what steps you need to take to improve it. It won't cost you anything. There's a link in the first line of the description on how to book the call. Now this is where I might upset some of you. If, like me, you were taught about the Ansel Adams zone system, where every photo ideally should include something from every zone, from zone 1 to zone 10, that's from pure black to pure white, then maybe you're wrong. This is a rule you kind of need to break. Because if you look at some of the most stunning photographs, the ones that stop you scrolling, you'll see they often have some really quite dense areas that might be very black or very light. When I'm walking around, I'm always thinking about how I'm going to process my images and what areas that I might want to take away the detail in to make very dark or very light. And that's what you need to do when you're thinking about it. I'm not telling you to discard the zone system. You know, it works very well and it will make you some beautiful photographs. But use it intelligently. Think about what you're going to do with your photo. Because when Ansel Adams was around, we didn't have digital cameras. He was working with film and he was working with paper in a darkroom and so on. So we have a bunch of technology he didn't have access to. We have sensors that are much more sensitive to light, have massive more dynamic range than any film he could have hoped for. So if you've got missing zones in your photograph, don't stress about it. Use them creatively. They're not wrong. They're just a way of adding more impact to your photo. The most important thing to think about when you're taking this photo is what emotional impact do I want it to have? What emotion am I trying to evoke in the viewer? Then you'll start making photographs that are creatively interesting rather than technically perfect. And what we all want to look at is something that strikes a chord with us, that brings out our emotions, not necessarily something we can look at and say, ooh, you know, that's technically perfect, but in actual fact, it doesn't evoke anything in me. My third and final point is what you do when you get back home. You've got better tools than Ansel Adams could ever have dreamed of. But a lot of people still use them like they're stuck in the darkroom era. If you're using a digital camera, it's time to think digital first. So let me show you how I've edited a couple of photos. I'm going to start with the one where I've just got these legs and shadows walking into a very brightly lit area where the sun was catching the pavement. And then I'll move on and show you how I edit an architectural style photo as well. First thing I'm going to do is just hit auto in Lightroom. Get the exposures about right. Then I'm going to convert it to black and white. Now it's converted to black and white. I'm actually going to play with these sliders. You could hit auto, but I'm not entirely happy with the results because I want to lighten up this area. So if I take the orange slider, that'll lighten up the highlight area, the area that's in sunshine. Same with the yellow. It'll take out some of the emphasis of the bricks, the sand in between them. And I'm going to take down the blues just to darken the guy's jeans on the left. Same with the purple, same with the magenta. And now I've got something more like what I want. Now I could use some filters in Lightroom, but I actually find it easier to do this in Photoshop. So now I'm going to read it into Photoshop. So we'll go to edit in Photoshop. Okay, now I've got it in Photoshop. I want to make some selections. I want to select this bit that's in the sunshine, but just the pavement bit. Over here where the car and the manhole is, I'm going to make that darker. So I've got a vision in my head of what the final image is going to be like. So I need to select that. First of all, I'm going to get rid of this unsightly pole because I really don't like that. I don't think it adds anything to the frame. So I'm just going to select round that and use the generative fill to get rid of that. Yeah, it's done a great job. So right, now I'm going to just unlock the background layer and I'm going to merge these two together. Okay, now I can go ahead and make my selection. So first of all, let me select this shadowy area here. I'm not too worried, it's got a bit of a fuzzy edge. I'm just going to darken it a bit later on. So each time I make a selection, I'm going to save that selection so I can work on them and I know what I'm working on. And I'm just going to call this shadow. I'm now going to select this guy over on the left-hand side. So we'll deselect everything else first. And we'll see if we can select him with the quick selection tool. Yeah, it's done an average sort of a job. So I'll tidy that up. I'm not going to bore you with watching me make all the selections. I just want to give you an idea of what's going to go on. Okay, now I've made a number of selections. Let me just show you what they are. So I've got this shadow area, which is the bit in black, not the bit in red. Okay, I've selected this man on the left-hand side. I've selected his shadow, so we're just looking at the bits in black. Okay, I've selected the other man who's up here, and I've also selected his shadow, which you can see in black, and I've selected the road, and the other bit I've got is this highlighted area. So those are all my selections. Now I can work on those. Let me just turn that off. The next thing to do is create a new layer, which is Shift Command N. I'll put up on screen what it is if you're using Windows. And I'm going to fill this with a neutral color. You must have your mode set to one of these lighting modes, and I usually choose soft light. You could choose hard light, that's also quite a good one, and just put fill with neutral color there, say OK. Now I'm going to load one of my selections, so go to the select menu, load selection, and let's choose the road, because I want to put that into darkness so it isn't distracting from what I had in mind. Now I take a brush, make sure that's set to black and white, and I've got it set on black, and you need to set your opacity, I would say probably around 15–20% for big changes. You can change this to anything you like, but keep it quite low. I'm going to start with around 25%, and I'm just going to paint on here, and you can see immediately what the effect is. It's darkening that right down. In fact, I'm going to paint in quite a lot here, so I'm almost eliminating that car and the distraction. Okay, and because it's just working on the selection, it doesn't affect the man in the background. Now I can move on to another area, so let's load a different selection. So let me load this highlighted area that's right in the middle of the frame, and I'm going to paint this with white now, so you can simply press X on your keyboard to swap from black to white and vice versa, and paint over this area to bring it up. Okay, I'm not going to show you the whole editing process because it make the video a bit boring, but I'm going to darken down this other area, and let's load the paint shadow, and we'll paint that black. Okay. And all the time, I should say, I've got my brush hardness set to very soft. Now you can go in and highlight some of the little details now. So let's say I wanted to do something with the man up front, his legs. They look a bit bright to me, so let's load up the selection that I made for that man on the right hand side. Okay, and I'm going to set the opacity now of my brush to something quite low. Got it at 8% there. Let's zoom in and make my brush much smaller, and I can now start to do something with these legs. And if I just paint over those, you can immediately see there's a bit more definition in there, and particularly concentrate on the sort of edges, and that'll bring those up. I'm going to darken down this white bit of his trainer, and same with this other leg. Just darken that in a bit, just to give it a bit more contrast against the background. And you see how it's kind of emphasizing the shapes of his leg, his muscle tone and everything, and that'll make it pop against the background. And that's simply all you need to do. So go around altering the areas you want, and when you've got it, you should end up with a finished image that looks something like this. Was my finished image. Let me show you another example. This is an architectural shot. It's a bridge in Manchester in Media City. I've taken this long exposure shot here. Doing local adjustments has much more impact than global adjustments. That's my final image. But if I show you on this panel over here on the channels, you can see all the different things I've selected, like the sky, the rest of the image, everything but the sky, the building over to the left, the uprights and the cables, the ITV building, the left-hand side of the bridge, the railings, the bridge and the water. So you get the idea. And then what I've done when I've selected each of these, I've applied some adjustments just to that bit of the image. Local adjustments make all the difference. This is where you can bring in your creative expression. You choose which areas you want to highlight and put into shadow, and you can choose how you separate those from the background. And this is the magic sauce that will make your photos really pop. And the beauty of doing it in things like Lightroom and Photoshop is you've got digital precision and control that would make the old masters really jealous. Look, Ansel Adams was a master, but he was working in a very different world. He was working with film. He was working in a darkroom with an enlarger and different papers. And I'm not saying throw his zone system out of the window. It's good practice to get a balance of tone in your images. But today's most powerful black and white images often interpret the zone system creatively. Choose emotion over technical perfection, impact over balance. Sometimes breaking the rules is exactly what your photography needs. So go out and try it. Don't be scared of turning parts of your image into deep black or pure white, and let me know how you got on. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.